Hi, this is Bobby Kimbrough again, and welcome to Off the Cuffs. I'm excited today to have with me Dr. Simpler, the Chief Psychologist for Naphcare. I want to thank you for stopping by, taking time to fly all the way up from Alabama just to be here with us today. I really appreciate you being here. Welcome to Off the Cuffs.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you for having me.
No, thank you for coming. So what we try to do is when we have guests, we always like for them to tell us about yourself. Tell us, who you are. You and I were talking a moment ago. I know a little bit about you, but share with us who you are and how did you arrive as the Chief Psychologist for Naphcare?
Well, I guess we'll start in the beginning.
Sure.
Early on, I knew that working with justice-involved individuals would be a path for me, and it kind of unfolded over the years. So starting out working on my bachelor's, then my master's in psychology. But I had an opportunity very early on to visit a couple of state institutions in Alabama and did my thesis research on looking at rates of in-jail, in-custody substance use, and was astounded to find that more than half of the individuals in a correctional facility had been using alcohol, other drugs while they're there. And my path just developed from there.
Wow.
And ended up following into grad school where the whole program was tailored. It's a clinical psychology program, but focused it on being a legally informed clinician. And through those opportunities, I had I did research in 11 prisons in the Huntsville, Texas area. We were able to work with courts and work with justice-involved youth, adults, and over the years, I became a specialist in forensic psychology. My training took me to Western State Hospital in Tacoma, Washington.
Very impressive.
I appreciate that. It was an interesting year having an opportunity to work with people who were pre-trial defendants being sent to the state hospital because there was question about their mental illness and whether or not it would interfere with their ability to have fair due process. I also had a chance to work with individuals who were civilly committed sexually violent predators after they had done their tenure in the DOC. They were moved into this facility because they were posed a danger to others, the community at large. And I remained on at that facility after my postdoc in forensic psychology to be an evaluator for the state, and stayed there for almost a year before I came home, Birmingham being home for me. Birmingham. And at that point, I went to work in a maximum security psychiatric hospital for the state. It was the only maximum security facility, forensic patients that had a combination of people who were pre-trial, had been found incompetent to stand trial, and sent to the state hospital for treatment. We also had individuals who were on the other side of adjudication and had been found not guilty by reason of insanity. So our hospital was treating mental illness for those individuals, and worked there for almost 8 years in that position. Gradually built up to becoming the director of psychology, where I managed forensic evaluations for the state, in custody and out of custody evaluations. And over the years, the system got complicated. It saw what we have coined the competency crisis, where people with mental illness were waiting in jails for an opportunity to transfer to the state hospital for treatment.
It's interesting you say that. You have a very impressive resume, and not only is it impressive, the work that you're doing is very interesting. Several years ago, when we came into this space to the sheriff's office, we noticed some of the things that you were saying at the detention center, that the detention center had become a holding place for people that had mental health issues that caused them to be there, and at the same time were causing problems while they were there. And one of the things that we wanted so badly was to have a behavioral health unit. And so when the county commissioners thanked them, I'll thank them again and again for that, put the funding for that, and we were able to create that, and thus Naphcare, and thus you created the unit that we have now. I want to thank you for that. But when we talk about that population of persons that are currently incarcerated, speak to me about how do we get there to where our detention centers have become a holding cell, or that's just a sign of the times that we're in, that mental health is on the rise, and people that end up in those places are needing help long before they get there. Because I know when I travel across the state and across the country, there are places that are not as fortunate we are that have a behavioral health unit to deal with that. And what I have seen thus far from the program that we have here, it is amazing. I have seen them before and after. I've been to both of the graduations. And so talk to me about that, because it's very interesting to me. And it's sad when you see the before and when you see the after. It's hope. You almost saying, wow, that person it's a new person. They found themselves.
Right. And to get to that end point, the history, right? We're centuries of treating individuals with mental illness in the same way. We've institutionalized people. We've kept them, many, many years ago, right? We kept them chained. We kept them locked down. And, the fact that we have confined individuals because of their severe mental illness is not new. I think the shift is where we're doing that. And wow. I love the fact that, here in Forsyth County, we have an opportunity to break that mold and break that tradition. But in the 1950s, we saw a move for deinstitutionalization where it's like, stop warehousing people in our state psychiatric hospitals. In 2010, there was a push for community-based treatment. Stop putting people in state hospitals away from their homes, put back. And so we've definitely fallen in line with that. But what I see is that in 2010, when Rosa's Law came down, state hospitals saw that as an opportunity to close their doors. And the problem is that they didn't build the necessary infrastructure to support community-based treatment. And so what we have is this disconnect where there's a need, right, to help people and serve that population. And unfortunately, what that meant was that jails became the new state hospitals. And so it's not new that we confine individuals because of these aberrant behaviors, but where we're housing them is definitely different. And I think from the correction side of things, it's a new world because this is not a population that you're used to having in your care and in your custody.
So let me ask you this. I have noticed, so when I go over to the detention center, I can see how being confined would increase your symptoms. It would cause you to become agitated. And especially if you have any type of issues, how they can increase. So when you started building this program and you started looking at it, what were some of the things that you felt was necessary? I know that when I go over there, the folk that are on our behavior unit are grateful that we have that unit. One of the few behavior units in a detention center on a county level in the state. And so they always tell me that they appreciate the care that they're getting. And it is amazing to see the before and the after. Mm-hmm. So when you looked at this and you started putting this program together, what were some of the things that you said was a must for the program? How did you build something like that?
So the must is finding those people who are not faring well because of their behaviors, because the jail programming didn't know how to handle them. They would often confine them, as you mentioned, in an isolated housing situation. Isolation is an incubator for psychosis. And for people who are already struggling to stay connected to reality, the sounds of jail is unstabling. You hear doors clanging, you hear voices, but you can't see other people. And those in and of themselves can be symptoms of psychosis, but then it becomes compounded and really struggle to find where is reality? What's real, what's not real, the fear that comes along with that. So isolation in a jail is, like I said, an incubator for furthering psychosis and decompensation. I wanted to find those people. Those are the individuals who are going to benefit most from your program. Let's find those, because if we understand in the context of fear, the behavioral challenges that come along with that, any organism who feels threatened or challenged or fearful will default to self-preservation. And what do? We fight, we flight, or we freeze. And in those situations where you can't run, right, because you're in a very confined space, freezing is an option, but most often you're going to fight. And so those individuals who are fearful, instead of seeing their behavior as a defiance or being antisocial or pushing back and resisting, what we need to understand is that they're scared and they're very, very frightened. And so the things that escalate the behavioral situations in the facility, right, where officers are having to respond, perhaps are having to use shows of concern or force to manage the behavioral disruption, we can help eliminate that if we create a safe environment and if we create a safe context for a person to work on their own stability. If you're familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs,
self-actualization at the top of the
at
pyramid.
the top,
at the top.
But at the very bottom is
Basic
what?
needs.
Safety and security. That's right. And if you don't feel safe and that fundamental element is not met, you're not going to advance. You're not going to get to that point where I can start focusing on my mental health recovery. I can feel that I am comfortable enough in that situation to start moving towards self-actualization. We don't always get there, right? But that's the goal, is to know thyself and to understand what it takes to manage your own mental health, what it takes to survive in a system.
It took me 55 years to get to self-actualization.
I appreciate that you're there.
Yeah. It took me 55 years. I'm 60 now, but yeah, that's another conversation. You know what is amazing about this is that I applaud you for having the insight and the intellectual to be able to stay in a profession like that, because to understand it just from listening to you and how you speak about it, I know that you're passionate about it. And I love people that are passionate about what they do, because it's the love and the passion that keeps them there. But how do you, so for example, every day law enforcement are responding to crises, mental breakdowns on the street. How do we create an infrastructure to deal with folk? Because like when you just said, the flight, the fright, or the freeze, how do we deal with them to keep them from fighting to where the officer has to injure them or them injuring the officer?
Right.
How do we diagnose them? How do we create an infrastructure to give aid? Most times somebody has a breathing issue, you give CPR. You roll up on the scene. Okay, the person's not breathing. Let's check airways. Let's do this. How do you diagnose somebody when we roll up on situations? A man walking down the street defiant. How do you deal with that? How can we build some type of a curriculum the same way you have built inside the detention centers? Because I've always wanted to explore that. And it just came to my mind when you started talking. I said, let me ask her that. So
first and foremost is communication. Oftentimes the individuals who are high utilizers, we've seen them, we know them. Your field staff know before they go out, if this is a call where they've been before, they know the situation that they're walking into. I think tearing down the silos where communication can only happen in these fragmented ways, but sharing information, building crisis response teams. And so not only sending a law enforcement out to manage part of the behavioral aspect, but also accompanying that with a mental health professional who can help de-escalate that situation in a nonviolent way. I think the other part of that is training. And one of the things that we know about individuals who struggle with their mental health issues, we also know that individuals who get caught up in the justice system have a pretty significant history of trauma. And we know that these individuals, I'll often say, people don't come into this world choosing to be mentally ill, and they don't come into this world choosing to be on an offender pathway.
So let me ask you a question.
Okay.
From where you sit, didn't mean to interrupt you, but I just spontaneous sometimes. From where you sit and from what you have seen, would you say there's a certain population of persons that are affected by mental health more than another population, or is it equally distributed? Or what are some of the factors that cause it? I mean, for example, we know that when we start looking at personal histories on the justice system, we start looking at level of education. We start looking at poverty. We start looking at so many factors that led up to here. So when you look at it from where you sit, do you see that there's a group or a population that's affected more, whether it be race, color, creed, gender, than another?
So on the whole, mental illness doesn't discriminate.
Of course it doesn't.
It can affect anyone, anywhere. But we do know that lower socioeconomic status groups are most impacted by mental illness because of the lack of resources and access to care. And so if someone who has more advantages, particularly financially in life, they're going to get access to a different type of care. Whereas individuals who rely on social systems to provide that care for them, those are overwhelmed, they're overburdened. It takes months to get in. And so people who are in crisis don't necessarily have a place to go. And if you're in crisis, you're going to end up in a hospital or you're going to end up in jail.
I appreciate that. I knew the answer, but coming from an expert, I felt that it would be more impactful of you saying it. So let me ask you this. So how do we break down those barriers to get people that have lower socioeconomic status, get them the treatment that they need? How do we get it? Because what we're finding is that when people end up at the detention center, they've hit the bottom, so to speak. You know, they're incarcerated and they're having mental breakdowns. They're having so many things going on with them. How do we get them before they get to that place? Because it seems to me that if we catch them before they hit the bottom, they have a lot more likelihood of success if we catch them way before they fall. If we catch them somewhere in the falling. Mm-hmm. And so how do we create systems like that? Because I have been to court many times and watched people come in and out of court that you can clearly see something's going on with them. They have no resources. What I always tell people is how this society sees you will determine what they'll do for you and how they'll treat you and how they will handle you. So how I see you will determine how I treat you and the services that I give you. So as professionals like you and myself, how do we create something to give the need to the needy?
So multifold process, right? Concurrent process. The best form of treatment for any situation is prevention. And I think that prevention and education has to start early. We have to start I would say with children and in schools. We teach you basic math, we teach you English, we teach you history, we teach you all of these things. One of the things that we don't do so well is teach you how to take care of your mental health and how to manage stress and how to manage anxiety. And I definitely think that that's a burgeoning issue, particularly with all the different platforms and feeling all the world's a stage for our adolescents. So I got a challenge
for you then, right?
Okay.
So you and I have a symbiotic relationship, I like to call it, right? So you working with Naphcare, right? I work here with Forsyth County Sheriff's Office. We're working together right now. So my challenge is this to you, is that if you create some type of programming, let's partner and let's start right here in Forsyth County and start working with kids at that age to where we talk about how to take care of their mental health. The superintendent that we have now, McManus, I can't speak for her, but I think that that's something that is much needed. And I say that because every Monday I go teach a class at North Hills Elementary. I love working with the kids that I work with, but of course I don't have a resume like you do in terms of behavioral, but I can clearly see that there are some issues going on even at the elementary level. And so how amazing would it be if we could start talking about how to better take care of your mental health? We talk about hygiene, we talk about so many things in the school, but that's one that we don't talk about.
Right.
Why do you think that is?
There's just such a stigma. And I think that if we go back and look at the history, how do we respond as a society when someone tells us that there are problems with mental illness? We lock you away, we hide you.
True.
And so there's such a stigma. By normalizing and validating that we all have mental health and it's all something that we should be taking care of, the same way that we exercise and eat right to take care of our physical health, there are things that we should be doing to take care of our mental health. And by validating that conversation, understanding, we don't blame you. We don't lock you up because you have hypertension. We don't blame you or lock you up because you have diabetes, right? The same thing should happen in the mental health world where people feel comfortable. The problem is that you can't have those conversations safely without fear of consequences and what's going to happen.
That's interesting you say that. You brought up another question that I'm going to come back to when we talked about steps to take care of our mental health. I want to ask a few questions about that. But we do this thing every year that I'm going to ask you all to partner with us on. It's called Never Walk Alone, where we talk about issues in the community, addictions, whether it's drugs, whether it's alcohol, whatever it is. And one of the things that we talk about is you just said is that the stigma that's attached to anybody that's suffering from any type of disorder, we find a way to label them. We find a way to add stigma to it. And so no one wants to say that, hey, I have a mental health issue. No one wants to say that I'm an alcoholic. No one wants to say that I'm a drug abuser because now society looks at them totally different. You say, well, let me make sure I keep my wallet close to me or make sure I watch them. Because the brain is wired to where when somebody says something like that, the brain's, let's be watchful of them. So how do we change that stigma? Because like you said, all of us may be dealing with some type of mental health issues. All of us may have a vice or something that affects us from being or reaching that place what Maslow talked about. So what would you suggest, just based on your years of experience and expertise, what are some of the mental health things that, like for the heart, they say, my doctor said I should walk a lot. My doctor said I should change my eating habits. Mm-hmm. They also told me to stop drinking Mountain Dews. It ain't going to happen, right? So tell me some things that you think when we talk about mental health that a person should do.
Mm-hmm. So in preventative care, right?
What is that?
We should be, things that we do. So every year, people are supposed to have a physical, right?
Yeah, I know
you go
what
to
it
your
is.
doctor. So what is that for mental health?
Yeah.
Yes. So I think that we have a conversation about how our physical health manifests. We know that sleep is incredibly important for the brain. I mean, there's research all over with how it staves off Alzheimer's disease and the things that happen in our brains at night while we're sleeping. So sleep is an integral part of our overall healthcare. Monitoring when you're not sleeping as you normally should. Looking at your eating patterns. There's a lot of research between serotonin, which is an active neurochemical in the brain, and the gut right now. And so what we're putting into our bodies absolutely affects our mental health. So understanding those relationships, and again, that comes from education, but then having checkups, checking in periodically with the mental health professional saying, this is what's going on with me. These are the things that I've noticed. Looking at, I worry. Is it a level of worry that's kind of normal and valid, right? Or does it worry to the point that it's interfering with my life? And how do I manifest that? What happens when I'm stressed out? What happens when I have too much on my plate? And that can get into a completely different conversation about how we emphasize work and prioritize that and compromise other things that we do in life that do jeopardize our mental health. I
don't think you could live this life without stress. I was having a conversation with a group of people yesterday, and we was talking about leadership. So a woman, a person of your status, you're obviously in a leadership role as the chief psychologist. Anytime someone is in a leadership place, stress is automatically attached to that place that you're in. Mm-hmm. So how do you deal with the stressors, or how would you, or what would you suggest to someone that sits in a place where stress is constant?
You have to be willing to step aside and take care of yourself. I've trained graduate students before.
You say step aside.
Step aside.
Yeah.
But it's important. Over the past few weeks, for example, things have been mounting in terms of deadlines and responsibilities. And I knew it was important for me this weekend to just shut it off. I need to go take care of me. I need to do things for myself.
I've never done that. I've never shut it off.
I know. It's hard. And it takes a lot of
work. When
you
shut it off, what do you do? You cut your phone off?
I turn my phone off. I don't check my email. I surround myself with people that are more social, like my friends. So I disconnect from work entirely.
How often do you do that?
I try at least once a month.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, it's really important because
y'all got this, because I promise you, make sure you recording this, make sure you document this, that Dr. Simpler said I need to shut it off once a month, cut the phone off and disappear.
You do, because otherwise you're like a volcano, right? And it's just building and building and building, and eventually it erupts.
Can I have them put that in my contract?
You certainly can do whatever you'd like.
Can I say, can I have you write a letter for me?
Oh, you want me to write a letter validating that?
Yeah, validate that, saying that I believe that this man should have at least a weekend off, paid weekend off, right? Maybe a plane trip to Maui somewhere, right? Something, put something in there. Make it kind of eventful, stress-free.
Or a weekend on the river fishing. Whatever does it for you. I think that what we've forgotten is that as humans, we need to experience the entire human condition. We've created this illusory place where we're trying to be happy and everybody should get to happy and stay happy. And that's not our reality. Our reality is that we should be allowed to experience the entire human condition. We need to feel anxious. We need to feel sad. We need to feel happy. We need to feel jubilant. We need all of those things in our life. And sometimes when it doesn't come naturally because of our schedules or dictates, whatever, we have to manufacture that and we have to make it happen and get yourself to a place where I've been missing this part of the spectrum in my life and I need some of that right now to reset so that I can effectively deal with the things that are not creating positive experiences for you.
Wow. I got another proposition for you, but we're going to talk about it when the camera stops. You are actually getting my mind rolling real fast again. You know, as you can tell, I was kind of like on the low. Now I'm picking up on if it's the Mountain Dew kicking in or the conversation. But at either rate, that's very insightful, very insightful. You know, I've heard people say, just shut it off. I never knew what that meant. I don't know how to shut it off. Mm-hmm. I don't know how to just say I'm not answering the phone. I'm going to just not talk to anybody. I'm going to do what I want to do. So relieving stress for me is I'll get in my car and go driving, you know, for about an hour or so, blast the radio, you know, put on a few of my favorite songs, Earth, Wind and Fire, or something like that. And just for an hour or so, I don't want to be bothered. Well, like I love to drive at night. You know, sometimes in the middle of the night, I'll get up and just get on the highway and drive Durham and come right back. Then get into bed, sleep for 2 hours and get up and come to work. I have erratic sleep behaviors, you know, but it works for me. And I know that a lot of it could be stress, but that's interesting. You've been very insightful about that. So back to the detention center. Yes. I could talk to you for another hour, but a lot of questions swirling in my mind. So you are responsible for putting this program together.
Yes, that feels heavy. I had a team. I'm responsible for helping that team.
Yeah. I know you had a team. Yeah. And I applaud you, and I want to thank you and your team for putting it together, because it's an ask that we have been asking for quite some time, and asking for the funding for that. And again, I thank the commissioners for giving the funding for that, because it's much needed. Actually, I think we need to expand it to much larger, giving everybody a chance that we feel that needs it, because right now we're having to limit due to staff as well as personnel that we're utilizing. So when you put this program together, was it a one-size-fits-all, or were you actually looking at the individuals? When you put something together like that, how do you even begin to put that together?
So we did borrow a lot from a model that we have at one of our other partner sites in Tampa, Florida. But the idea is having a therapeutic environment, a therapeutic space where people can go and focus strictly on intensive curricula programming. The idea was that if we tear down some of the environmental factors that really define jail in a corrections environment, making this a more therapeutic unit. And so one of them was the aesthetics. Let's make it look as though this is a hospital situation. So there's the mural on the wall, there's the calming color paint on the wall. The other piece of that is the open bay format. And so with a direct supervision model, we have our individuals can come out and they can congregate in the open day area. And they love that. And some of the guys, when they first came into that unit, they had been in lockdown and isolated housing for quite some time.
True.
For quite some time. And simply providing them an opportunity to safely engage with others and with their peers. And that peer model is so important for that unit, because we recognize that individuals are at various stages in their recovery. And that really is the framework, and the curricula is a recovery-based model, recognizing that you've been diagnosed or had a recent decompensation with regard to your mental health. That's not the end of your journey. We have to heal from that. And so that recovery process is helping those individuals, as I mentioned, who are not faring well in a general population setting, who are confined and locked down in a restrictive housing situation because of their mental illness or symptoms thereof, and finding those people to pull in and say, this is where you're going to thrive. And we create a safe place where now they can focus on learning about their mental illness. For a lot of individuals who are in that situation, this is the first time that they've had mental health care, and sometimes adequate mental health care.
That is so true.
Yeah.
You know, we find people that come into the detention centers that have never had mental health care. They've never had health care.
Right.
And when they come in there, they are needing so many needs to be met to where you're actually fighting an uphill battle. You know, what was interesting to me, and, you know, I've been to 2 graduations over there, and the second one that I went to, so every time when I go over there to the graduations, I go in the pods, I shake hands, I bump hands, I hug them, I laugh, I sit around with them. And so one of the guys was saying, I want to show you something. And so they were showing me the before footage of some of the folk, right? And they were saying, you know, this guy's been charged with this, some horrific things that they have been charged with. And he said that when I saw you go in the pod, sitting in the middle of them, laughing and talking, said that I thought that you needed some counseling. And I said, why? And he said, because the folk that you were sitting with, had you seen the video prior to them receiving the counseling, I doubt you would have went in and done that. And so what I said was that I've got to trust the process. I've got to trust and show them that I believe in them and that I'm not afraid to interact with them. And I think that by doing that, and when you let people know that you care for them and you are a part of their treatment and you're a part of what they're going through, that's when the magic starts to take place. Because what you talked about earlier was that stigma. And so if I took a position, well, I'll talk to you all from over here, then I've basically labeled stigma to them as well. Then I become a hypocrite. And so I applaud you and your staff for what you're doing over there, because I can truly say that you all are making a difference. You have, I was a little apprehensive. I was.
I know.
I've always been transparent. I was a little apprehensive because of a lot of things, but I can surely say that you guys are truly, I won't say winning me over. I don't like that word, winning me over, but you are truly changing my thought process because you are doing a phenomenal job. You're doing a phenomenal job. And I want to thank you for that, because I have been standing back watching, and you have truly put your works where your mouth is, and you are delivering. So I want to thank you, Dr. Simpler, for the work that you're doing over there, continuously to do the work. I know that you're on a tight time schedule, so I won't take all of your time. I know you've got a plane to catch and people to see and a lot of other things. But I want to give you the last word, anything you want to share with us before you go, because I could carry this conversation another hour with you, because you're sparking a lot of questions that I have going on. So I want to invite you to come back and let's finish this conversation. But before we go, I want to give you the last word or two.
I appreciate that, and certainly appreciate all the work that you allow us to do here. My aim in destigmatizing the needs of this particular population is to challenge individuals to say, this could be anyone. That could be your brother. It could be your mother,
question.
your sister, all of us. It could be you. Hey, again, people don't choose this life, and there are context and situations that put them in this situation, this path. And with a little bit of compassion and a lot of caring, we can make a difference in individuals' lives. And I see what we're doing as one of my favorite analogies is almost like bubble wrap. These are vulnerable people. They're fragile, and they just need a little support. And if we can wrap them enough and insulate them in bubble wrap, right?
Yeah.
When they go back out into the community and perhaps they fall down again, it doesn't have to be a fall that lands them without mental health care, that lands them self-medicating with illicit substances, that lands them back into the detention facility. We can put in infrastructures and systems to help our vulnerable so that they don't have to continue to come through the system in the way that they are.
So if you had a magic wand, how could you increase this program, or what could you do to enhance some of the things that are being done that we can do better? so I can go back to my commissioners and say, I need more money, I need more people, I need more doctors? What would you say?
So I would love to see a women's unit. Women have different...
Can you say that again?
A women's unit.
I wanted them to hear it twice, but go ahead.
A women's unit, three times a
three
charm.
I like
right?
that. I like that.
So our women in corrections have different needs, and we could definitely make a lot of headway with parenting skills, life skills, trauma skills, those kinds of things in that. But I would like to challenge all institutions, correctional institutions, to really think about how we treat individuals when they are in a mental health crisis. And one of the things that I have noticed lately, when someone is in a place in their life when they are in crisis to the point that they are challenging their natural instincts to survive and saying, I want to die, I want to kill myself, that we respond differently, that we respond with more compassion. Right now,
I don't think people know how to respond.
They don't.
And I think that's where you come in at, teaching people how to respond, because I can tell you from law enforcement, you're trained to respond this way to this situation, this way to that situation. And so that's an issue.
Right.
How do we respond? Teaching people how to respond. That takes money, that takes resources, takes a lot of training. And for some reason, as you said, that population of persons, people don't feel that we should attach large sums of money to healing them or treating them. And that's a problem.
Well, and I wish that the way that we reacted was isolated, but it's not. When someone is in crisis, whether it's in the community, in our hospitals, in our jails, we treat them as a threat. We take away their clothing. We take away their utensils so that they have to eat with their hands. We take away a mattress in some situation, a sheet, any agent that could potentially be used to weaponize and end one's life. So if you're already in a place in your mind where it's so dark and dismal that you don't see a future, that you want to end your life, the way that we respond exacerbates that, and it makes it even darker. And why would I want to come out of this situation? And so we wonder why we have behavioral problems and those kinds of things. And I would offer a solution. I don't know what that solution is, but I think that that's where we have to go next, is how do we respond differently in a way that doesn't make someone's dark days even darker?
I like that. So I really have enjoyed talking with you. Took a lot from this conversation. One is I got to be careful what I'm eating and what I'm drinking. So you saying Mountain Dew good for me? You think so?
Moderation is always a good compliment.
Guess that went out the door. But yeah, so what I'm going to promise you is that I'm going to go back and say that Dr. Simpler said we need a women's unit. And I'm going to be calling you for a letter of recommendation, because I think we can get that done here in Forsyth County. Forsyth County is a place where we're very progressive, and it's about healing. And so I think that we might be able to get that done working together. So I want to thank you for taking time to come by here today. I definitely want you to come back. You have an open invitation to come back here. I have enjoyed myself. You have very thought-provoking. You have definitely been very thought-provoking to me. So I welcome you to come back anytime. It's been a pleasure. Thank you and your staff for coming. And as always, have a great rest of your week. And thank you for joining us for Off the Cuffs. Thank you.